Hello. Please take a seat. Hello, everybody. So I'm Jamie McGregor, Senior Vice President for Celent Technology Research Company. This is, unfortunately, a fracture. I did it whilst running. So anybody tells you that sort of running is good for your health, it's definitely not. It was very painful for the first 3 weeks. As we get started, I just thought I'd ask 3 questions. You know, this session's about the trouble with insurance is image. Just a quick show of hands. How many people have policies with more than one insurer? So you have a portfolio. So quite a lot of people. Right, now, if you think about that portfolio, think about the experiences you have with that particular insurance portfolio. How many of you would, based on just say one of those insurers within that portfolio, would be motivated to switch all of their business just to that one insurer based on that experience? Any show of hands? 2 down the front, maybe 1 over there. Yeah, hardly anything. So we got used to a sort of a way of living where we accept that basically we have to deal with a portfolio of insurers, and nobody's really delighted us necessarily to try and motivate us. So final question, based on those who said they would be motivated to move their policies to just one insurer, how many of those people who put their hands up would say they were so motivated they'd want to join and that employer, that insurer as an employee? 1. So that, I guess, gives an indication of the size of the challenge. I think we're going to have a really interesting debate with the panel. We've got basically AXA, one of the biggest retail brands in insurance globally, always comes up pretty high on the global recall list of brands. We've got Munich Re, the world's largest reinsurance company, very active in insurtech and digital. And we got probably sort of one of the most talked about new insurance companies in the world, Lemonade. If I could just get a little bit of background of each one. So Shai is a technology entrepreneur. He's sort of worked and developed different companies over the period and was attracted to insurance by just the opportunity, the lack of innovation. Amélie, as well as being a sort of an ex-professional junior tennis champion, joined AXA mainly because she was attracted by the talent and the people of the firm. So she wasn't actually attracted to insurance, but attracted to that. And she performs the role of Chief Digital Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. And then Dr. Olaf Frank works for Munich Re, as I mentioned, sort of probably one of the sort of very active insurers in the insurtech space, attracted to the insurance industry by the opportunity to code in Java when everybody else was coding in other things. So welcome to the panel. I'd like to start the question really sort of for people who were here last year. We talk a lot about digital and innovation in insurtech. And I sometimes wonder whether it's just an internal discussion that within the insurance industry we talk about that, but it doesn't actually get out to the outside world, and it's difficult to sort of really sort of evidence that. So over the last 12 months, for the people who were here last year to this year, what are the most significant things that you think have happened with the insurance industry? Amélie, shall I start with you?
Do you have a good insurance for your leg? Jamie, for your leg, you have a good insurance?
This was actually done on the National Health Service. No.
Okay. No, actually, it's a question I often get because people tell us sometimes, but you keep talking about digital disruption, but we actually don't see it in practice. I think, in fact, a lot is happening. And I think my 2 neighbors on the sofa are doing outstanding things. Lemonade and Munich Re clearly changing the game and trying new schemes on the value chain. But I would say that the example I want to mention is probably East. It's the Chinese example of Zhonggan. You probably all know Zhonggan, which is the very large fintech player, insurtech player, the Chinese one, which is a combination of the Tencent and Alibaba technologies and the insurance know-how of Ping An. And actually, the rate of development of that firm is just very impressive. I was looking at the figures, and they have sold 7 billion policies. they insure 500 million customers now, and it's purely online.
Yeah.
So don't listen anymore to people that tell you that insurance is not a place to buy online. It surely is.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Olaf.
Yeah, I think we have seen some changes over the last year. Just for Munich Re, we have a lot of initiatives coming out, and also with our primary insurance Ergo, there's some things like Nextable just now starting. I think there's a lot of activity in the underground, so to say. You know, we prepare a lot of things. It's not at all. It's not all visible yet, because I think it takes some preparation for a conservative industry, basically, to change and to have the change sink in, and then really to see the changes at the outside, you know. So we have some things like digital partners where we actively try with Trove and Slice to really get into those markets, and I think there is some evidence there.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not that that big volume yet, but we are still hoping for the best.
Yeah. Shai, do you have any sort of?
Well, we're a newcomer to this industry. So 5 years ago, I wasn't even in insurance. I didn't know much about insurance. The only thing that I can talk about is kind of the last couple of years where we have been part of this industry. And when we started this company, it felt like a void. We didn't see a lot of activity going on from an innovation perspective, new companies setting up. If you follow what's going on today, that's a totally different thing, right? There's almost every week we hear about a new, whether it's a small or a larger company starting something around insurance. So the space is definitely heating up.
Okay. And relatively recently, I was speaking to an investment research analyst looking after institutional investors, and he was asking the question, sort of, has technology really changed anything in the industry around how we should look at valuation of insurance companies? And his point of view was, we used to look at it from a scale and a brand presence point of view. How important is that today, given where we are on technology and what we're seeing in the marketplace?
First, I think brand remains a fantastic asset. For one reason, it brings trust.
Yeah.
And in financial services, that trust element is absolutely paramount. Scale, I would say it's probably a bit less important than it used to be.
Okay.
But it remains critical because it brings diversification. If you look at the recent storms on the western part of the world, it's very good to be present in other geographies to diversify your risk. But clearly, for me, the one critical factor now is technology. This is really bringing big changes, and I was very impressed by Lemonade saying, for the first time, we think of ourselves as a tech company, not as an insurer building an app. We're a tech company doing insurance, and I think that paradigm shift tells a lot on the new situation.
Yeah. And Lemonade, you're a new brand to the block, so what is scale important? Does size matter for you?
Sure. So I think that scale is a big word, and it has many different angles to insurance. The first thing I would say is that it has a lot to do with how you build the infrastructure for the company. When you start a new insurance company, you always face the challenge of deciding whether you want to buy the platform that you run on or use an existing system. I think that you have to think about scale when you do that if you want to be responsible, if you want to think about building a big company. The second thing is distribution, which becomes, I think, a challenge for insurtech companies.
Yeah.
Insurtech companies often think about insurance as just another retail type of business, and what works with selling products or online services doesn't work with insurance. It's a totally different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think scale. I think it's not an either or. I think you need both. You need enough presence in the market so you can really deal with the bigger claims and the bigger problems that you can get in things like hurricanes just this year. So you have to have a certain capacity to really deal with this. On the other hand, I think it's all about technology when it comes to being more efficient. So I think you will not be able to compete in the future if you can't really get the benefits from automation and artificial intelligence. Yet I think it's also important to at least have someone in the background, not to say that each and every small initiative or startup has to be of huge reach, but you have to have some capacity in the background where you can, balance your losses also.
Yeah, I think from a efficiency perspective, I think one aspect of scale is that the entire ecosystem is changing. I mean, again, going back to my previous point, when we started, there was no one doing anything around insurance, and now there's so many companies providing an ecosystem of services. So, as instead of if 10 years ago we would start a company, we would have to solve our own liability claims and do our own repair work for customers.
Yeah.
It was part of claims, and now there's companies doing that. They provide a service. So using the ecosystem as a kind of a SaaS platform for many of the things that you used to need to solve yourself provides you with a kind of an infinite scalability in a way.
Yeah. So as a startup, sort of Lemonade was obviously, when it was launched, it was very high profile. Yeah. You had, you've been able to prove that you've been able to make some noise in the industry. Scale may not be important to you. Sort of where have they had the sort of the challenges to it? And then specifically, I suppose, maybe from Amelie's point of view, sort of when you look at Lemonade, I'm curious to how the conversation goes internally within AXA, sort of looking at a Lemonade. Do they see it as either a great model to copy and develop further? Do they see it as a threat to the existing business? Or do they just look at firms like that as an acquisition target?
It's a very good question, and we don't all have the same opinion internally. But overall, I think we really take the arrival of Lemonade as in fact, as a very positive stimulus.
Yes.
And I think Lemonade is getting it right, very right, in terms of saying that insurance can be cool. There is no fatality. Doesn't have to be a boring business. It can be a cool one. And also on the fact that if you prioritize customer experience, if you really are obsessed with getting it right for the customers and solving their problems, you have a future.
Yeah.
So this is extremely inspiring, and also the fact that they put the bar very high in terms of technology and data, because one goes with the other, is a confirmation that we've moved into a new era, a new world, and we will need to excel at this, not only at actuarial models, quality of pricing, quality of the distribution. We will need to be giants in those spaces too, if we want to still be a leader in the new century.
So do you still see, to come back to the question of a threat, do you see it just as a catalyst then, is what I'm hearing, or do you just see it as a threat? If you can't get it right internally.
We see it as a manageable threat.
Okay, all right, so very good.
Good answer.
Yeah, so around the sort of coming back to what does the future of the industry look like, given that maybe scale in the traditional sense is not so much important. Yeah, how do you sort of envision the future of the industry sort of playing out? Do you see fewer capital providers but larger ones, more brands? How does it play out? Maybe Olaf, if you have a view, because I mean, Munich Re are pretty active in fueling new brands in the marketplace.
Well, I think I'm pretty sure there will be some kind of consolidation, because I think customers are not willing to have this variety of products that are not really different any longer. So I think there's really a drive towards more simplicity, more clarity about the product, and I want to know what I purchase when I sign the contract. Yeah? So I think there's a lot going to that direction, which usually comes with standardization, which means you have to be on top of a lot of things because there's not too much to differentiate anymore for some markets. So I think there will be some kind of consolidation. I think you need to be on top of almost all of the innovative initiatives. So in that regard, I think we have to learn from companies like Lemonade how that works, because we haven't been very innovative for the last 100 years, I guess. So we have to kind of keep now the pace and really do the changes. And then I think there's a lot of opportunity in that. So I think it's not really can we see it as a threat, because it's there, it will come. And the only question is, how do we deal with it? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sort of curious about obviously, AXA and Munich Re have very established ecosystems with incubators, direct investments in some insurtech firms. And you tried lots of things over the years. Going back to the point you sort of said to start, we've talked about digital quite a lot for quite a long period of time. I'd imagine there's situations in there where things have worked and things have been an outright sort of failure or hasn't really delivered the expectation. I'm curious to sort of hear about from you, sort of what did you try and thought would actually work really well, but just didn't, and being a portfolio company, you can switch, versus sort of what things have actually sort of really shown that they've made a difference to your business results.
Well, experience really tells me that innovating is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's a lot of details, it's a lot of passion, a lot of dedication, a lot of alignment, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So you need to know it, and you need to know that you're not going to be able to innovate on 100 topics in a given year. So select the battles and be prepared to a tough challenge. If I try to answer your question, I think one of the failures or one of the things where we probably were disappointed about adoption is the universe of connected home.
Okay.
IoT, we believe, could really secure homes, but in fact, we see that the complexity of the devices, probably the too long customer journeys connecting the device, the app, connecting to the third-party providers that will actually watch in practice when there is an alert and get into your house, all this remains too complex to really convince customers.
Yeah.
But in the mid and long term, we believe in the potential of it. On the other hand, a good success we had is on blockchain. AXA has been very innovative on that front, and we have launched very recently Fidzi, which is a service that really automates the claims payment when you have a flight delay in a few milliseconds, extremely seamlessly. And there I think we've been extremely good at mastering not only the technology, but the overall customer end-to-end experience.
Yeah. Okay. Shai, can I come to you on that one? Because one of the sort of, I guess, central ingredients of Lemonade is behavioral science and artificial intelligence.
Yep.
And I guess unlike AXA and Munich Re, you don't have a portfolio to fall back on. You are the business, right? So what you try either has to work or it has, or it doesn't.
Right.
Maybe you could share some examples of what's worked for you, what you found, what you discovered around that. I think it'd be quite interesting.
Cool. So obviously we don't have enough information to to really have kind of strong conclusions about what works and what doesn't with the behavioral economics side of things. But we have seen some positive results. So just to give you an example of what we're doing, so when you go through a claim in the app, one of the things that you need to go to is a kind of a set of trust element that we embedded into the flow. So just one example of that is signing your name alongside your photo, which has been proven to improve people's honesty. Another one is taking a video of yourself explaining what happened, which again, it's based on research of the famous mirror research, where people behave more honest when they have a mirror in front of them than when they don't. So we incorporate a lot of those things. We don't see any one of those as a single magic bullet, I should say. But I think that in a kind of a combination of both fraud algorithms that we're running in the background and also trying to influence how people behave, as a combination, it works well. One of the results that we have seen is that about 3% of claims that we had were returned to us. Now, I don't know if you guys have any information about that, but with traditional industry. But what I mean by that is that we actually paid someone. For example, a guy lost his MacBook Pro, right? We paid him 3 seconds, got his money. The guy finds his MacBook Pro a day later. The guy calls us, or actually sends us a message through the app and says, "Hey guys, I found my Mac. How do I give you back your money?" I don't think that's a common thing to happen in the insurance industry, specifically in the US. So, it's not statistically significant yet, and there's a lot to be proven, but I think that we are seeing some positive results around that.
Yeah. Is that a common experience in AXA? Or
I think it's fascinating because you're opening new spaces in the customer relationships there, and the sole fact that Lemonade hired a chief behavioral officer, I think really means a lot. Of course, behavioral science, you can apply it in many different ways across the insurance value chain. It can serve to fight against fraud. You can use it to improve the quality of your acquisition funnel because you will realize that maybe the orange box sells better than the yellow one, etc. You can also use it, and we do it in recruitment. You just look at the way people use gaming to know better their feelings, the way they react, their attitude towards risk, etc. But probably the most promising avenue is when behavior creates new business models. And the one element I have in mind is health and prevention. The fact that you can really, through well-being and prevention, try to influence positively the behaviors toward more healthy behaviors and convert that into better premiums for the customer. There you manage to align the interest of the customers and that of the company, and you start doing something very interesting.
Okay. And coming to a close in a second, but Olaf, I just want to ask you the question. From a Munich Re point of view, you see a lot of innovations out there. Are you at a point where you can actually say whether this has a material impact on the financial performance of the firm? So is it better, I often wonder, is it better to spend 50 million on an existing model and just digitize the hell out of it versus 50 million on a whole set of either behavioral, IoT type of initiatives? How do you view that? And if you can keep it succinctly as possible, that would be great.
I think it depends on your horizon that you want to look at. Long term, I think you have to spend the 50 million on innovation because that's going to happen over time, regardless of what you think. If you want a short-term return for next year, I guess you should spend the 50 million on something else. But as a company, I think there's a clear commitment and also a clear revelation for us that this is where we will go. It's only a matter of time and what exact steps we will have to do to get to this end.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so in the last sort of 30 seconds or so, I want to sort of hold you to account and predict what you can expect to see in the marketplace between now and the next time that Web Summit happens next year, and you will be held to the prediction that you make. Olaf, as you were talking, what's the prediction that you expect to see in the marketplace over the next 12 months? What
that's
change?
really difficult. So I hope that our Ergo initiatives take off well. I hope that we can automate a lot more internally. So that's something that maybe the customer doesn't see right away.
Stop there? It needs to be measurable. So something that we can put in an envelope.
Difficult to say. I think what I see is at least a couple of initiatives, let's say 5, that we will start off.
Okay.
I would probably say that by 1 year, I think Amazon will have become a very significant player in our industry. We were debating with Shai backstage on what approach is it going to be. Still pretty unclear, but I'm very confident that they're going to take big moves in that space, but also watch AXA.
Okay. Yep. Shai.
Well, I think there's one thing for certain, and I'm willing to bet on that. There's going to be a big fire, a big storm, and we're going to do some interesting things.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much for the panel. Really appreciate it, and thank you, everybody. Cheers.